The winds howled over the wall, carrying the bitter chill of the far north. Jon Snow stood atop the ancient structure, his black cloak snapping in the gusts, his dark eyes fixed on the endless white expanse beyond. The Night's Watch was his home now, or so he had told himself for years. But the weight of secrets pressed heavier than the cold. Ned Stark's honor had bound him to silence, but the truth burned in his veins. He was no bastard, no Snow. He was Aegon Targaryen, son of Rhaegar and Lyanna, heir to a legacy of fire and blood. For years Jon had buried that truth, clinging to the Stark name, to the honor of the North. But the dreams had grown stronger, dragons soaring over fields of ice, a throne of iron wreathed in flame, and a voice whispering, "You are the blood of the dragon." He could no longer deny it. The world was fracturing, White Walkers stirring beyond the wall, the Seven Kingdoms tearing themselves apart in war. If he was to protect the realms of men, he could not do it as Jon Snow, the bastard of Winterfell. He would have to embrace the dragon within. The hall of Castle Black was dim, the fire in the hearth struggling against the creeping cold. Jon sat at the head of the long table, his brothers of the Night's Watch gathered around. Samwell Tarly, his closest friend, fidgeted with a stack of parchments while Ed Tollett slouched, his face etched with his usual grim humor. The others, Gren, Pip, and a dozen more, watched Jon with a mix of loyalty and unease. Word had spread of his meeting with the wildling chieftain Tormund Giantsbane, who claimed a great host of free folk would join the Watch if Jon led them south to face the coming storm. "You're talking madness, Jon," Ed said, breaking the silence. "Marching south with wildlings? The North will call it treason. The Boltons will have your head on a spike before you reach Winterfell." Jon's jaw tightened. "The Boltons hold Winterfell because the North is divided. The real threat isn't Roose Bolton or his bastard son. It's what's coming from beyond the wall. If we don't unite, we'll all die." "And how do you plan to unite anyone?" Pip asked, his voice sharp. "You're Lord Commander, aye, but you're still a Snow. The Lords of the North won't bend the knee to a bastard." The word stung as it always had. Jon's hand rested on the hilt of Longclaw, the Valyrian steel sword gifted to him by Jeor Mormont. He could feel the eyes of his brothers on him, waiting for an answer. This was the moment. He could continue as Jon Snow, bound by duty, or he could claim the truth and risk everything. "I am no bastard," Jon said, his voice steady but low, like the rumble of distant thunder. The hall fell silent. Sam's eyes widened, his quill frozen above the parchment. Jon rose, his cloak falling back to reveal the direwolf pommel of Longclaw, a Stark symbol that felt like a lie. "I am Aegon Targaryen, son of Rhaegar Targaryen and Lyanna Stark. I am the true-born heir to the Iron Throne." The words hung in the air, heavy as a blade. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Ed let out a sharp laugh, though it lacked humor. "Targaryen? You've been out in the snow too long, Jon. Next you'll say you've got a dragon hiding in the stables." But Sam wasn't laughing. He pushed his chair back, his round face pale. "Jon, is this true? How do you know?" Jon met Sam's gaze, seeing the fear and hope mingled there. "Ned Stark told me before he died. He swore to protect me, to hide my birthright. But he's gone, and the realm is bleeding. I can't hide anymore." Gren shifted uncomfortably. "If you're a Targaryen, what does that make you? King? You'd abandon the Watch?" "I'd save it," Jon said fiercely. "The Night's Watch can't stand alone. We need the North, the Vale, the Riverlands, and all of them. If I must claim my name to rally them, I will." Murmurs rippled through the hall. Some brothers looked inspired, others skeptical. Jon knew the risk he was taking. The Watch was sworn to neutrality, and claiming a royal title could be seen as desertion, but he also knew the stakes. The White Walkers were no myth. He had seen them, fought them. The realm needed a leader, and the dragon's blood in his veins demanded he answer the call. Sam stood, his voice trembling but resolute. "If Jon says he's a Targaryen, I believe him. And if he thinks this is the way to save us, I'm with him." Ed groaned, rubbing his temples. "Seven hells, Sam. You'd follow him to King's Landing and back. Fine. What's the plan, Lord Commander? Or should I say, Your Grace?" Jon allowed himself a faint smile. "We start with the North. I'll send ravens to the lords, declaring my claim. Tormund's wildlings will march with us. We take Winterfell from the Boltons, rally the North, and prepare for what's coming. And if the North doesn't kneel to a Targaryen? Pip asked. Then I'll make them, Jon said, his voice carrying the weight of fire and ice. The march south was grueling. 10,000 wildlings, 1,000 black brothers, and a scattering of northern clansmen who had joined after Jon's ravens reached them. The snow slowed their progress, and the winds carried whispers of dissent. On rode at the head of the column, Ghost loping silently at his side, the white direwolf's eyes glinting like blood in the moonlight. Tormund rode beside him, his red beard crusted with frost. You've got stones, Snow, or Targaryen, whatever you call yourself, Tormund said, grinning. Claiming a throne's one thing, keeping it's another. The North loves Starks, not dragons. The North loves strength, Jon replied. I'll give them that. Tormund laughed, a booming sound that echoed over the snow. Aye, maybe. But you'd best hope that dragon blood of yours comes with some fire. You'll need it against Ramsay Bolton. Jon's thoughts darkened at the mention of Ramsay. The bastard of Bolton had despoiled Winterfell, murdered Robb's bannermen, and, if rumors were true, held Sansa Stark captive. Jon's half-sister, his cousin, he corrected himself, was in danger, and that alone was reason enough to march. But he knew this was bigger than family. Winterfell was the heart of the North, and without it, his claim meant nothing. As they neared the ruins of Moat Cailin, a rider approached under a banner of truce. Jon recognized the sigil, a flayed man, red on pink, a Bolton envoy. He signaled for the column to halt, his hand resting on Longclaw. The envoy was a gaunt man with a pinched face, his voice nasal and smug. Lord Ramsay Bolton, Warden of the North, demands your surrender, Jon Snow. He knows of your treason, your false claim to a dead dynasty. Lay down your arms, and he may grant mercy. Jon's eyes narrowed. Tell Ramsay I'm coming for Winterfell. Tell him Aegon Targaryen will have his head. The envoy sneered but said nothing more, wheeling his horse and galloping back into the snow. Tormund spat after him. That one's got a flaying coming. You sure you're ready for this, dragon boy? Jon didn't answer. He urged his horse forward, the weight of his decision settling deeper. He was no longer just fighting for the North. He was fighting for his name, his blood, his destiny. Winterfell loomed through the snow like a ghost of its former self. Its towers were scorched, its walls battered, but it stood defiant. Jon's forces encamped a mile away, their campfires flickering like stars against the white. Scouts reported that Ramsay's army was smaller than expected, 5,000 men bolstered by levies from the Dreadfort and Carhold. Jon's wildlings and clansmen outnumbered them, but the Boltons held the castle, and Ramsay was no fool on the battlefield. In the command tent, Jon stood over a map of the North, flanked by Tormund Davos Seaworth, who had joined them after Stannis' defeat, and Wyman Manderly, a fat lord whose loyalty to the Starks had brought him to Jon's cause. Davos's weathered face was grim as he traced a finger along the map. Ramsay will try to draw us into a trap, Davos said. He'll use the castle's defenses, maybe even Sansa, to bait you. Jon's fists clenched. If he's hurt her! We'll get her back, Davos said firmly. But you can't let him goad you. You're not just Jon Snow anymore, you're Aegon Targaryen. Act like it. The words steadied Jon. He nodded, turning to Manderly. Lord Wyman, your men will hold the eastern flank. Tormund, take the wildlings and circle west. We'll draw Ramsay out to force him to fight on open ground. Manderly's jowls quivered as he nodded. The North remembers my lord. We'll see the flayed man burn. As the meeting ended, a horn sounded outside. Jon strode from the tent, Ghost at his heels, and saw a figure approaching under a white flag. His heart stopped. It was Sansa. She was thinner than he remembered, her auburn hair tangled, her face bruised but unbroken. She rode alone, her eyes locking with Jon's as she dismounted. The camp fell silent, every man watching. Jon, she said, her voice trembling but strong. Ramsay sent me to deliver a message. Jon stepped forward, his hand itching to draw Longclaw. What message? Sansa's lips tightened. He says if you attack, he'll flay every man in your army. He says he'll make you watch as he takes me again. Her voice cracked, but she held her head high. But I told him you'd come. I told him you'd kill him. Jon's vision blurred with rage, but he forced himself to stay calm. You're safe now, Sansa. I swear it. She shook her head. I'm not safe until he's dead. And Jon, He knows about your claim. He's spreading word that you're a Targaryen usurper. The North is listening." Jon felt the weight of her words. The North's loyalty to the Starks was deep, but a Targaryen? That was a harder sell. He took Sansa's hands, his voice low. "I'm still your brother, Sansa. Stark or Targaryen, I'll fight for our home." She nodded, tears in her eyes. "Then fight, Jon. Be the dragon." Dawn broke cold and gray, the snow falling in thick curtains. Jon's army formed ranks, wildlings chanting war cries, clansmen beating their shields. Across the field, Ramsay's forces emerged from Winterfell, their banners snapping in the wind. Jon rode at the head, Longclaw at his side, Ghost prowling beside him. Sansa had refused to stay behind, standing with Davos at the rear, her presence a reminder of what was at stake. Ramsay rode forward, his pale eyes glinting with malice. "Jon Snow? Or is it Aegon Targaryen now?" he called, his voice carrying over the field. "You think a name makes you a king? You're still a bastard to me." Jon didn't answer with words. He raised Longclaw, and his army roared, surging forward. The battle began in a clash of steel and screams. The wildlings fought with savage fury, their axes and spears cutting through Bolton levies. Tormund led a charge that broke the enemy's left flank, while Manderly's knights held the east, their lances shattering shields. Jon fought in the thick of it, Longclaw singing as it cleaved through armor and flesh. Ghost tore at horses and men alike, a white specter of death. But Ramsay was cunning. His archers loosed volleys from the castle walls, and a hidden force of cavalry struck Jon as rear, sowing chaos. Jon rallied his men, shouting orders, but the tide was turning. He caught sight of Ramsay across the field, grinning as he nocked an arrow. The arrow flew, and Jon raised his shield, but it wasn't aimed at him. It struck Ghost, the direwolf, yelping as he fell. Jon's heart lurched, rage consuming him. He spurred his horse toward Ramsay, cutting down anyone in his path. "Ramsay!" Jon roared, his voice like a dragon's bellow. The Bolton bastard turned, his smile fading as Jon charged. Their blades met, sparks flying in the snow. Ramsay was skilled, but Jon fought with the fury of his blood, Stark ice and Targaryen fire. He drove Ramsay back, each swing of Longclaw heavier, until finally he disarmed him, sending his sword spinning into the snow. Ramsay fell to his knees, laughing despite the blood streaming from a gash on his face. "You'll never hold the North, Targaryen. They'll never love you." Jon raised Longclaw, his voice cold. "I don't need their love. I need their strength." The blade fell, and Ramsay Bolton's head rolled into the snow. Winterfell was theirs. The Bolton banners were torn down, replaced with the direwolf of Stark, and, for the first time, the three-headed dragon of Targaryen. Jon stood in the great hall, Sansa at his side, as the northern lords gathered. Wyman Manderly, Lyanna Mormont, and others watched him with wary respect. Ghost, bandaged but alive, lay at Jon's feet. "My lords," Jon began, his voice echoing off the stone walls, "I am Aegon Targaryen, but I am also a son of the North. I claim Winterfell not as a conqueror, but as a protector. The true enemy lies beyond the wall. Join me, and we will face it together." Lyanna Mormont stepped forward, her small frame belying her fierce presence. "The North knows Starks, not Targaryens. But you've bled for us, Jon. You've won Winterfell. House Mormont will follow you." One by one the lords knelt, their voices rising in a chant. "The King in the North! The Dragon of Winterfell!" Jon felt the weight of their loyalty, but also the fragility of it. He was no longer just Jon Snow, but he was not yet a true Targaryen king. The road ahead would be long, and the Iron Throne was a distant dream. But as he looked at Sansa, at the lords, at the dragon banner hanging beside the direwolf, he knew one thing. The dragon had awakened, and it would not sleep again. The fires of Winterfell burned bright against the endless winter night, their glow casting long shadows across the snow-dusted courtyard. Jon Snow, no, Aegon Targaryen, stood on the ramparts, his breath clouding in the frigid air. The direwolf banner of House Stark hung beside the three-headed dragon of House Targaryen, a symbol of his dual heritage. The North was his for now, but the victory over Ramsay Bolton had only sharpened the edges of his challenges. The lords who had knelt to him in the great hall whispered of his Targaryen blood, some with awe, others with suspicion. Beyond the wall, the White Walkers stirred, and in the south the Iron Throne sat contested, a prize that called to the dragon in his veins. Jon's hand rested on Longclaw's hilt, the Valyrian steel a cold comfort. Ghost, still healing from the arrow wound taken in the battle, lay at his feet, his red eyes glinting like embers. Sansa's words echoed in Jon's mind. Be the dragon. But what did that mean? To rule with fire and blood, as his ancestors had? Or to temper that fire with the honor of the Starks? The weight of his choice pressed heavier each day. Below, the castle buzzed with activity. Wildlings trained alongside northern men, their rough laughter mingling with the clatter of steel. Tormund Giantsbane's booming voice carried over the din, barking orders to his free folk. Davos Seaworth moved among the lords, smoothing tensions with his plain-spoken wisdom. Sansa, ever the Lady of Winterfell, oversaw the restoration of the castle, her presence a reminder of the Stark legacy Jon could not forsake. But the North was only the beginning. Jon knew the realm needed more than a king in the North. It needed a dragon to unite it, or burn it to ash. The Great Hall of Winterfell was warmer now, its hearths roaring, but the mood was tense. Jon sat at the high table, Sansa to his right, Davos to his left. The northern lords filled the benches below, their faces a mix of loyalty and unease. Lyanna Mormont, fierce despite her youth, sat near Wyman Manderly, whose bulk seemed to anchor the room. Tormund, an outsider among the lords, leaned against a pillar, his red beard catching the firelight. A maester entered, his chains clinking, and presented a sealed scroll. "From the Vale, my lord," he said, bowing to Jon. Jon broke the seal, his eyes scanning the parchment. The words were formal, penned in the elegant hand of Petyr Baelish, but their meaning was sharp. The Vale, under Lord Robin Arryn, acknowledged Jon's victory at Winterfell, but questioned his Targaryen claim. "The North is Stark, not dragon," Baelish wrote. "Prove your worth, or the Vale will look elsewhere." Sansa's lips tightened as Jon read the message aloud. "Littlefinger," she said, her voice low with venom. "He's playing his games again. He'll support you only as long as it serves him." "He's not wrong," Wyman Manderly rumbled. "The North follows you because you bled for Winterfell. But a Targaryen king? That's a harder tale to sell. The Vale, the Riverlands, they'll need more than a name." Jon set the parchment down, his jaw tight. "They will have it. The White Walkers are coming. If we don't stand together, the realm will fall." Lyanna Mormont's sharp voice cut through the murmurs. "The North knows the threat, Lord Targaryen, but the South doesn't. They're too busy squabbling over the Iron Throne. Who sits it now? Cersei Lannister. Daenerys Targaryen." The name Daenerys sent a ripple through the hall. Jon had heard the tales. His aunt, the mother of dragons, had landed in Westeros with an army of Unsullied and Dothraki, her 3 dragons darkening the skies. She had taken Dragonstone, her ancestral seat, and was rallying houses to her cause. If Jon was to claim his Targaryen heritage, he would have to face her, kin or not. "Daenerys is a conqueror," Jon said, choosing his words carefully. "But I'm not here to conquer. I'm here to protect. If she shares that goal, we'll find common ground." Tormund snorted. "Dragons don't share, lad. You'd best be ready to fight fire with fire." Before Jon could respond, the maester returned, his face pale. "Another raven, my lord, from the wall." The hall fell silent as Jon unrolled the scroll. The message was brief, scrawled in Samwell Tarly's familiar hand. "The wall is under attack. Whites, thousands of them, Night King sighted. We need you." Jon's heart sank. The true war had begun. Jon wasted no time. He rallied 5,000 men, wildlings, northerners, and clansmen, and marched for the wall, leaving Sansa and Davos to hold Winterfell. Tormund rode at his side, his axe slung across his back, while Ghost, limping but fierce, kept pace. The snows deepened as they traveled, the wind carrying a chill that bit deeper than any winter Jon had known. It was the cold of death, the cold of the others. As they neared Castle Black, the sky darkened, not with clouds but with an unnatural gloom. The wall loomed ahead, its icy surface scarred and cracked, as if clawed by some monstrous force. Jon's stomach twisted. The wall had stood for thousands of years, a bulwark against the terrors of the North. If it fell, nothing would stop the dead. At Castle Black, Sam greeted them, his round face haggard. "Jon, thank the gods," he said, clasping Jon's arm. "It's worse than we thought. The Whites attacked 3 nights ago. We held them off, but they keep coming. And the Night King... He's real, Jon. I saw him." Jon's mind raced. He had faced Whites before, at Hardhome, but the Night King himself was a shadow out of legend. "Where is he now?" Eastwatch, Sam said. Tormund's men there sent word. The sea's frozen and the dead are crossing it. Tormund cursed. Bloody ice demons. We need dragonglass, Jon, and fire, lots of it. We have dragonglass, Jon said, thinking of the caches Sam had found beneath Dragonstone. But fire... that's another matter. Sam hesitated, then spoke. Jon, there's something else. A rider came from Dragonstone. Daenerys Targaryen wants to meet you. She's offering an alliance. Her dragons for your support. The words hit Jon like a blow. Daenerys, his aunt, the other dragon. Her aid could turn the tide against the Night King, but at what cost? She claimed the Iron Throne, and Jon's own claim as Rhaegar's son threatened hers. He had embraced his Targaryen heritage, but was he ready to challenge the Mother of Dragons? We'll deal with Daenerys later, Jon said. First, we stop the dead. Eastwatch by the Sea was a ruin when Jon's army arrived. The castle's walls were shattered, its towers collapsed under the weight of ice and whites. The sea beyond was a frozen wasteland, crawling with the dead. Jon's forces took position on a ridge overlooking the castle, their breath steaming in the air. Dragonglass-tipped arrows and spears gleamed in the torchlight, a faint hope against the darkness. The whites came at dusk, a tide of rotting flesh and glowing blue eyes. Jon fought at the forefront, Longclaw carving through the dead with ruthless precision. Ghost tore at their limbs, his snarls a counterpoint to the eerie silence of the enemy. Tormund's wildlings fought with savage abandon, their axes and spears felling whites by the dozen, but the dead kept coming, relentless. Jon's eyes scanned the battlefield, searching for the Night King. He spotted him atop a distant hill, astride a dead horse, his armor glinting like frost. The Night King raised a hand, and a wave of cold swept over the ridge, extinguishing torches and freezing men where they stood. Jon's heart pounded, the dragon's blood in his veins roaring in defiance. "Fire!" Jon shouted, signaling the archers. Flaming arrows arced into the night, igniting piles of pitch-soaked wood. The flames drove the whites back, but only for a moment. Jon knew they needed more, something to turn the tide. Then from the south a roar split the sky. Jon's head snapped up, his breath catching. A shadow passed overhead, massive and winged, its scales glinting in the firelight. A dragon. Drogon, Daenerys' largest, swooped low, unleashing a torrent of flame that consumed hundreds of whites in an instant. Two more dragons, Rhaegal and Viserion, followed, their fire carving paths through the dead. Jon's men cheered, but his own heart was conflicted. Daenerys had come unbidden, her dragons a force of salvation and a reminder of her power. He caught sight of her atop a distant rise, her silver hair unmistakable, her unsullied guarding her. She met his gaze across the battlefield, and for a moment the world seemed to still. The Night King raised his spear, its tip glowing with an unholy light. Jon shouted a warning, but it was too late. The spear flew, striking Viserion in the chest. The dragon screamed, a sound that shook the earth and crashed into the ice, its blood steaming as it died. Daenerys' cry of anguish carried over the chaos, and Jon felt a pang of shared grief. The dragon was his kin, too. Rage surged through him. He charged toward the Night King, Longclaw blazing in his hand. Whites closed in, but Jon fought like a man possessed, his Targaryen blood lending him strength. He reached the hill, only to find the Night King gone, vanished into the snow. The whites retreated, their purpose unclear, leaving the battlefield strewn with the dead. The survivors gathered in the ruins of Eastwatch, the air thick with the stench of ash and death. Daenerys Targaryen stood before Jon, her violet eyes assessing him. She was shorter than he'd expected, but her presence was commanding, her grief for Viserion etched into her features. Tyrion Lannister, her hand, stood at her side, his sharp gaze flickering between them. Sir Jaime Lannister, the Kingslayer, lingered nearby, his golden hand glinting in the torchlight. "You're Jon Snow," Daenerys said, her voice cool but curious. "Or so they call you. Yet you claim to be Aegon Targaryen, my brother's son." Jon met her gaze unflinching. "I am Aegon, son of Rhaegar and Lyanna Stark. Ned Stark hid me to protect me from Robert's wrath. I don't seek your throne, Daenerys, but I won't deny my blood." Tyrion raised an eyebrow. "A Targaryen raised as a Stark? That's a rare combination, and a dangerous one." Daenerys' lips tightened. "If you're truly Rhaegar's son, you're a threat to my claim. The Iron Throne is mine by right." The throne means nothing if the dead overrun the realm, Jon said, his voice hard. You saw the Night King. You lost a dragon. We need to fight together, not against each other. Daenerys studied him, her expression unreadable. You speak of unity, yet you've crowned yourself king in the north. Why should I trust you? Because I've seen the enemy, Jon said. I've fought them. I know what's coming. Your dragons are our best hope, but they're not enough. We need the north, the Vale, the Riverlands, all of Westeros. Tyrion cleared his throat. A practical man, this one. Perhaps we can find common ground. Your Grace, if Jon, Aegon, proves his loyalty, an alliance could benefit us all. Jaime Lannister snorted. Loyalty? He's a bastard playing at king. The North won't follow a dragon, and neither will the South. Jon's hand twitched toward Longclaw, but Daenerys raised a hand, silencing Jaime. Enough. Aegon, if you would have my dragoness bend the knee, swear fealty to me, and we'll face the dead together. The words hung in the air, a challenge. Jon's mind raced. Bending the knee would secure Daenerys' aid, but it would alienate the North, who had just crowned him. Refusing could spark a war between dragons, weakening them against the Night King. He thought of Sansa, of Ghost, of the men who had died for him. He thought of the dragon's blood in his veins, urging him to claim his destiny. I'll consider your offer, Jon said finally, his voice steady. But first we prepare for the next attack. The Night King isn't finished. Daenerys' eyes narrowed, but she nodded. Very well, we'll fight side by side for now. That night, Jon stood alone on the shattered walls of Eastwatch, Ghost at his side. The stars were hidden by clouds, the air heavy with the promise of more snow. He felt the weight of his choices, the pull of his dual heritage. Stark honor demanded he protect the North, but Targaryen fire demanded he claim his birthright. Daenerys was a force of nature, her dragons a power he couldn't ignore, but she was also a rival, a queen who would not share her throne. He thought of his mother, Lyanna, and his father, Rhaegar. They had loved each other, defying a kingdom to be together. Their love had sparked a war, and Jon was its legacy. He could not undo the past, but he could shape the future. Ghost nuzzled his hand, a low growl rumbling in his throat. Jon knelt, pressing his forehead to the direwolf's. We'll face the fire, boy, he whispered, and the ice. In the distance, Drogon roared, a sound that shook the night. Jon rose, his resolve hardening. He was Aegon Targaryen, the dragon of Winterfell. He would unite the realm, not as a conqueror, but as a shield. The Night King would fall and the Iron Throne would wait. For now, the dragon's shadow would grow, and Westeros would learn to fear its fire. The ruins of Eastwatch by the sea smoldered under a sky heavy with ash and snow. The stench of charred whites lingered, a grim reminder of the battle against the Night King's forces. Jon Snow, Aegon Targaryen, stood atop a broken tower, his black cloak snapping in the wind, Longclaw sheathed at his side. Ghost, his white direwolf, sat nearby, his wounds bandaged but his red eyes alert. The victory had been costly. Viserion, one of Daenerys' dragons, lay dead, his golden scales shattered on the frozen sea. The Night King had retreated, but Jon knew it was only a matter of time before the dead returned, stronger and more relentless. Below, the camp was a hive of activity. Daenerys' Unsullied stood in disciplined ranks, their spears gleaming while her Dothraki scouted the frozen wastes. Tormund Giantsbane's wildlings repaired defenses alongside Jon's Northerners, their uneasy alliance forged in blood. Daenerys herself was a beacon in the chaos, her silver hair catching the torchlight as she conferred with Tyrion Lannister and Sir Jaime Lannister. Her remaining dragons, Drogon and Rhaegal, crouched on a nearby hill, their eyes glowing like furnaces. Jon felt the weight of her presence, the pull of their shared blood. Daenerys had demanded he bend the knee, but Jon had deferred, prioritizing the war against the dead. The North had crowned him king, and he could not betray their trust, not yet. But the dragon in him stirred, whispering of fire and thrones, of a destiny that could not be denied. In the makeshift command tent, the air was thick with tension. Jon stood at the head of a rough-hewn table, Daenerys across from him, her violet eyes unyielding. Tyrion and Jaime flanked her, while Tormund and Samwell Tarly represented Jon's side. A map of Westeros lay between them, marked with the Night King's last known position, and the strongholds of the living. "We can't hold Eastwatch," Jon said, his voice steady. "The wall is breached, and the dead will overrun us if we stay. We need to fall back to Winterfell, fortify the north, and rally the southern houses. Daenerys' lips tightened. Winterfell is yours, Aegon, but the south is mine. The Iron Throne is mine. If we abandon the wall, the dead will march unopposed. They're already marching, Tormund growled, his red beard flecked with frost. We barely held them here, and that was with your bloody dragons. We need more men, more dragonglass, more everything. Tyrion leaned forward, his mismatched eyes sharp. The North alone can't stop this, nor can Dragonstone. We need the Vale, the Riverlands, even the Lannisters. If Cersei can be persuaded, an alliance is our only hope. Jaime snorted, his golden hand resting on the table. Cersei? She'd rather burn King's Landing than help a Targaryen, especially two of them. Jon ignored Jaime's barb, focusing on Daenerys. You saw the Night King. You lost Viserion. This isn't about thrones anymore. It's about survival. Join me at Winterfell. Bring your dragons, your armies. We'll face the dead together. Daenerys studied him, her expression unreadable. And what then? If we defeat the dead, what becomes of your claim, Aegon? You call yourself a Targaryen, yet you wear a crown. Will you challenge me for the Iron Throne? The question hung like a blade. Jon felt the eyes of everyone in the tent. Tormund's fierce loyalty, Sam's quiet hope, Tyrion's calculating gaze. He thought of Sansa, holding Winterfell and the northern lords who had knelt to him as their king. Bending the knee would secure Daenerys' aid, but it would fracture the North's fragile unity. Refusing could spark a war between dragons, dooming them all. I don't want your throne, Jon said, his voice low but firm. I want to save the realm. If that means we fight side by side, so be it. But the North won't kneel. Not until the dead are defeated. Daenerys' eyes narrowed, but Tyrion spoke before she could. A compromise, perhaps. A pact. You fight together against the Night King, and the question of the throne is tabled until the war is won. No kneeling, no crowns, just survival. Tormund laughed, a harsh sound, a southerner's answer. Words won't stop whites? But Sam, ever the scholar, nodded. It could work. A truce, sealed by action. The North and the South, united under two Targaryens. The realm would see it as strength, not division. Daenerys considered this, her fingers tracing the edge of the map. Very well, she said at last. I'll bring my forces to Winterfell. We'll fight the dead together, Aegon. But when the war is over, we will settle this, king or no king. Jon nodded, a weight lifting, though he knew the truce was fragile. To Winterfell, then. The march south was a grim procession. Jon's northerners and wildlings moved alongside Daenerys' unsullied and Dothraki, their differences stark in the snow. The dragons flew overhead, their shadows a constant reminder of the power Daenerys wielded. Jon rode at the head, Ghost loping beside him, while Tormund bantered with the Dothraki, their mutual respect forged in battle. Daenerys kept her distance, riding with Tyrion and Jaime, her dragons never far. At night the camp was an uneasy blend of cultures. Wildlings shared mead with Dothraki, their tales of battle growing wilder with each cup. Jon moved among them, his presence a bridge between worlds. But he felt Daenerys' gaze, her unspoken challenge. She was fire incarnate, a queen born to rule, and Jon was still learning what it meant to be a dragon. One night, as the camp settled, Jon found Sam by a fire, poring over a tattered book. "You're up late," Jon said, sitting beside him. Sam looked up, his round face lit by the flames. "I'm reading about the Long Night. The histories say Azor Ahai forged Lightbringer by tempering it in his wife's heart. It's a grim tale, but... Jon, what if you're meant to be that hero? You and Daenerys together?" Jon frowned, the weight of prophecy heavy. "I'm no hero, Sam. I'm just trying to keep us alive." "But you're a Targaryen," Sam pressed. "And so is she. The blood of the dragon united. It could be the key." Jon stared into the fire, the flames dancing like dragons. "Maybe. But first, we survive." Winterfell was a fortress reborn when Jon's army arrived. Sansa had worked tirelessly, repairing walls, stocking granaries, and rallying the northern lords. The castle's courtyard was packed with tents, the banners of Stark, Targaryen, and a dozen lesser houses mingling in the snow. Sansa greeted Jon with a fierce embrace, her auburn hair a stark contrast to the gray stone. "You brought her," Sansa said, glancing at Daenerys, who dismounted nearby, her dragons circling above. The North won't like it. They'll like the dead less, Jon replied. We need her, Sansa. Her dragons are our best weapon. Sansa's eyes hardened. And what happens when the war is over? She's a conqueror, Jon. She won't share power, not even with you. Jon had no easy answer. He led Daenerys and her retinue to the great hall where the northern lords awaited. Lyanna Mormont stood at the forefront, her small frame radiating defiance. Wyman Manderly loomed beside her, his jowls quivering with suspicion. The air crackled with tension as Daenerys entered, her presence commanding silence. My lords, Jon began, standing at the high table. This is Daenerys Targaryen, Queen of the Seven Kingdoms. She's come to fight the dead with us. Together we can save the North and the realm. Daenerys stepped forward, her voice clear and strong. I bring 2 dragons, 10,000 unsullied, and 40,000 Dothraki. I've seen the Night King. I've lost a dragon to him. I will not let him destroy this land. Stand with us, and we will prevail. Lyanna Mormont's eyes narrowed. The North crowned Aegon Targaryen, not you, lady. Why should we trust a southern queen? Daenerys' smile was sharp. Because I have fire, and you have ice. Together, we are unstoppable. Murmurs rippled through the hall. Wyman Manderly spoke, his voice booming. Fire or no, the North remembers the Mad King. We'll fight with you, but we kneel to no one but our king. Jon felt the weight of their loyalty, but also the fragility of the alliance. He raised a hand, silencing the room. This isn't about crowns. It's about survival. The Night King is coming. We fight as one, or we die alone. The lords nodded, some reluctantly, and the pact was sealed. Winterfell would be the bulwark against the dead, a fortress of ice and fire. That night Jon walked the ramparts, Ghost at his side. The castle was alive with preparations. Smiths forging dragon-glass weapons, archers stocking quivers, maesters tending the wounded. But Jon's mind was elsewhere, caught between duty and destiny. He had embraced his Targaryen heritage, but the cost was mounting. The North's loyalty was fragile, Daenerys' ambitions clear. And the Night King loomed, a shadow that chilled even the dragon's fire. Daenerys found him there, her cloak billowing in the wind. You're troubled, Aegon, she said, her voice softer than in the council tent. I see it in your eyes. Jon met her gaze, seeing the fire that burned within her. I'm trying to hold this together. The North, the South, you, me. It's a lot to carry. She stepped closer, her breath clouding in the cold. You're a Targaryen. You were born to carry it, but you don't have to do it alone. For a moment Jon felt the pull of their shared blood, the bond of dragons. She was his aunt, but also something more, a mirror of the fire he was only beginning to understand. You want me to bend the knee, he said, his voice low, but I can't. Not yet. Daenerys' eyes softened, but her resolve was iron. Then earn it, Aegon. Prove you're the dragon you claim to be. Fight with me, and we'll see what the future holds. She turned to leave, but Jon called after her. Daenerys, thank you for Viserion for coming. I won't forget it. She paused, a faint smile touching her lips. Nor will I. Days passed, and the air grew colder, the snows deeper. Scouts reported white sightings near the Wolfswood, and Jon knew the Night King was closing in. He threw himself into preparations, training with Tormund, consulting with Sam, and strategizing with Daenerys. The dragons were their greatest asset, but also their greatest vulnerability. If another fell, the war could be lost. One evening, as Jon sparred with Tormund in the courtyard, a horn sounded. 3 blasts, the signal for danger. Jon sprinted to the walls, long claw in hand, Ghost at his heels. From the north a shadow moved, vast and unstoppable. The dead had come. The battle began in chaos. Whites poured from the trees, their blue eyes glowing in the twilight. Jon's archers loosed flaming arrows, while Daenerys' dragons took flight, their fire-carving paths through the horde. Jon fought on the walls, Longclaw a blur as he felled whites, their brittle bodies shattering under Valyrian steel. Ghost tore through the dead, his snarls a beacon in the dark. Daenerys rode Drogon, her commands sharp as she directed the dragon's flames. Rhaegal fought alone, his green scales flashing as he burned whites by the hundred. But the dead were endless, climbing the walls, overwhelming the outer defenses. Jon saw men fall, wildlings, northerners, unsullied, their screams swallowed by the night. Then a chill deeper than the winter swept over the battlefield. The Night King appeared astride a white dragon, Viserion reanimated, his eyes glowing blue. The undead dragon roared, a sound that shook the earth and unleashed a blast of icy flame that shattered Winterfell's northern gate. Jon's heart sank. "Daenerys!" he shouted, spotting her atop Drogon. "The Night King! We have to stop him!" She nodded, urging Drogon into the sky. Jon rallied his men, leading a charge through the broken gate to meet the Night King's forces. Tormund fought at his side, his axe a whirlwind, while Ghost guarded his flank. The battle became a blur of steel and fire, ice and blood. Jon caught sight of the Night King standing amid the chaos, his spear raised. Viserion hovered above, his icy breath cutting through the living. Jon knew what he had to do. He sprinted toward the Night King, Longclaw blazing, his Targaryen blood roaring in his veins. The Night King turned, his eyes locking with Jon's. Time seemed to slow as Jon raised his sword, ready to strike. But before he could, Viserion swooped low, his claws raking the ground. Jon dove aside, the impact shaking the earth. The Night King raised his spear and Jon braced for death. Then a roar split the sky. Drogon crashed into Viserion, Daenerys' commands ringing out. The dragons clashed, fire against ice, their screams echoing over Winterfell. Jon seized the moment, charging the Night King. Their blades met, ice against steel, and the shock sent Jon staggering. The Night King was strong, impossibly so, but Jon fought with the fury of a dragon. Daenerys' voice carried over the chaos. "Aegon, now!" Jon ducked a swing of the Night King's spear and drove Longclaw into his chest. The blade sank deep and the Night King's eyes widened, a crack spreading through his icy form. He shattered, a cascade of frost and shadow, and the whites around him collapsed, lifeless. Viserion fell, his undead form crumbling, while Drogon landed heavily, Daenerys leaping from his back. She ran to Jon, her face streaked with ash. "You did it!" she said, her voice trembling with awe. "We did it!" Jon corrected, his chest heaving. "But it's not over!" The dead were defeated, but Winterfell was battered, its walls scarred, its people bloodied. Jon knew the Night King's fall was only a reprieve. The war for the realm, the war for the Iron Throne loomed, and the dragon's pact would be tested. As dawn broke, Jon stood in Winterfell's courtyard, surrounded by the living and the dead. Sansa embraced him, her relief palpable. Tormund clapped his shoulder, his grin fierce. Daenerys stood apart, her dragons resting on the hills, their power undeniable. The northern lords gathered, their faces a mix of gratitude and wariness. "My lords," Jon said, his voice carrying over the crowd. "The Night King is dead, but the fight isn't over. The realm is fractured, and we must mend it. I am Aegon Targaryen, but I am also a son of the North. I fight for you, for all of Westeros." Daenerys stepped forward, her presence commanding. "And I fight for the living. Together we've defeated death itself. Join us, and we'll build a new world." The lords cheered, but Jon saw the doubt in their eyes. The North had accepted him as their king, but Daenerys was a foreigner, a conqueror. The pact held for now, but the shadow of the Iron Throne loomed. That night Jon sat by Ghost in the Godswood, the heart tree's red leaves whispering in the wind. He thought of his mother, Lyanna, and his father, Rhaegar. Their love had birthed him, a dragon raised as a wolf. He thought of Daenerys, his kin and his rival, and the fire they shared. The road ahead was uncertain, but Jon knew one thing. He was Aegon Targaryen, and he would forge his own legacy, of ice and fire. The dawn over Winterfell was pale and cold, the sky streaked with clouds that promised more snow. Aegon Targaryen, once Jon Snow, stood in the Godswood, the heart tree's red leaves stark against the frost. Longclaw hung at his side, its Valyrian steel a silent reminder of his duty. Ghost, his direwolf, sat beside him, his white fur blending with the snow, his red eyes fixed on the weirwood's carved face. The Night King was dead, shattered by Jon's blade, but the victory felt hollow. Winterfell's walls were scarred, its people weary, and the fragile pact with Daenerys Targaryen strained under the weight of their shared blood and rival claims. The North had crowned Jon their king, embracing him as Aegon Targaryen, the Dragon of Winterfell. But Daenerys, with her dragons and armies, was a force the North could not ignore, nor fully trust. Her demand that Jon bend the knee lingered, an unspoken challenge that threatened to fracture their alliance. The Iron Throne loomed in the south, a prize neither could ignore, and the southern houses watched, waiting to see which dragon would rise. Jon's thoughts churned. He had embraced his Targaryen heritage, but the Stark honor instilled by Ned Stark anchored him. The North was his home, its people his kin, yet the dragon's fire in his veins called him to a greater destiny. He knelt before the heart tree seeking guidance, but the old gods were silent. A ghost's low growl broke his reverie. Jon rose, hand on Longclaw, as Sansa approached, her auburn hair catching the faint light. Her face was drawn, the weight of Winterfell's survival etched into her features. "The lords are restless," she said, her voice low. "They cheered you as king, but Daenerys' presence unsettles them. Her dragons, her Dothraki, they see her as a conqueror, not a savior." Jon nodded, his jaw tight. "She fought for us, Sansa. Without her dragons, we'd have lost Winterfell." "And now she expects loyalty," Sansa countered. "The North won't bend the knee to a southern queen, Jon. Not even for you." He met her gaze, seeing the steel beneath her worry. "I'm not asking them to. But we need her, Sansa. The realm is still divided. Cersei holds King's Landing, the Vale wavers, and the Riverlands are a ruin. If we don't unite, we'll fall." Sansa's lips tightened. "And what of you, Jon?" "Aegon Targaryen, king in the North. Will you challenge her for the throne?" The question pierced him. He wanted to protect the realm, not conquer it, but the dragon's blood whispered a power of a legacy he could not escape. "I don't know," he admitted, "but I won't let the North suffer for my choices." Sansa placed a hand on his arm, her touch grounding him. "Be careful, Jon. Dragons burn what they cannot rule." The great hall of Winterfell was packed, the air thick with the scent of wood smoke and tension. Jon stood at the high table, Daenerys beside him, their presence a study in contrasts, his somber black cloak against her silver and red. Sansa sat to Jon's right, Davos Seaworth to his left, while Tormund Giantsbane leaned against a pillar, his wildling presence a reminder of the North's rugged heart. The northern lords filled the benches, Lyanna Mormont's fierce gaze cutting through the crowd, Wyman Manderly's bulk anchoring the room. Daenerys' advisors, Tyrion Lannister, Sir Jaime Lannister, and Missandei, stood behind her, their southern polish at odds with the North's grit. A map of Westeros lay on the table, marked with the Night King's defeat and the strongholds of the living. Jon spoke first, his voice steady. "The dead are gone, but the realm is wounded. Cersei Lannister holds King's Landing with the Golden Company. The Vale hesitates, and the Riverlands are leaderless. We must unite the Seven Kingdoms, or we'll face new threats. War, famine, chaos." Daenerys stepped forward, her voice clear and commanding. "The Iron Throne is the key. I am the rightful queen, born to rule. Join me, and we'll bring peace to Westeros." Lyanna Mormont's sharp voice cut through the murmurs. "The North has a king, lady. Aegon Targaryen, who slew the Night King. Why should we follow you?" Daenerys' eyes flashed, but she kept her composure. "Because I have dragons, armies, and a vision for a better world. The North cannot stand alone." Wyman Manderly's jowls quivered as he spoke. "The North stood against the dead with our king at the forefront. We'll not trade one war for another, not for a Targaryen who knows nothing of our ways." Tyrion cleared his throat, his voice smooth. "My lords, consider this. 2 Targaryens, united, could rally the realm. Aegon commands the north, Daenerys the south. Together, you're unstoppable." Jaime Lannister snorted, his golden hand glinting. "A fine dream, brother, but dragons don't share. Cersei won't kneel, and neither will the North. This alliance is a house of straw." Jon's hand twitched toward Longclaw, but he held his temper. "Enough. Cersei is the immediate threat. Her Golden Company could march north or strike the Riverlands. We need to move first, secure the Vale, rally the Riverlands, and face her in the south." Daenerys nodded, her eyes meeting Jon's. "Agreed. I'll send emissaries to the Vale and Riverlands. My dragons will scout Cersei's forces. But we must present a united front, Aegon. The realm must see us as one." The lords murmured, some nodding, others skeptical. Sansa spoke, her voice calm but firm. "The North will fight, but we fight for our home, not a throne. Prove your intentions, Queen Daenerys, and we'll stand with you." The council ended with a tense agreement. Jon and Daenerys would lead a joint campaign to secure the Vale and Riverlands, then turn south to face Cersei. But Jon felt the fault lines beneath their pact. The North's loyalty was to him, not Daenerys, and her ambition burned too brightly to be contained. Jon's army marched south, a vast host of northerners, wildlings, unsullied, and Dothraki. The dragon soared overhead, Drogon and Rhaegal casting shadows that unnerved even the hardiest warriors. Jon rode at the head, Ghost at his side, while Tormund bantered with the Dothraki, their shared love of battle bridging their differences. Daenerys rode with her advisors, her silver hair a beacon in the snow. The Vale was their first target, its knights a crucial addition to their forces. But Petyr Baelish, Lord Protector of the Vale, was a snake, and Jon knew he'd need more than words to win him over. Sansa had stayed at Winterfell, her presence vital to holding the North, but she'd sent a letter warning Jon of Baelish's treachery. "He will smile to your face and plot behind your back," she wrote. "Trust nothing he says." At the Bloody Gate, the Vale's knights met them, their armor gleaming under the mountain sun. Sir Jon Royce, a grizzled lord, greeted Jon with a nod, his eyes wary as they flicked to Daenerys. "The Vale welcomes the king in the north," he said, "but we've had no word from Lord Baelish. He's at the Eyrie, scheming, no doubt." Jon dismounted, his hand resting on Longclaw. "Take us to him. We've no time for games." Royce led them through the Vale's winding passes, the dragons circling above. The Eyrie loomed, a white fortress perched on a peak, its walls impregnable. Baelish awaited in the high hall, his mockingbird sigil pinned to his cloak, his smile sharp as a blade. "King Aegon, Queen Daenerys," Baelish said, bowing low. "A historic meeting. The Vale is honored." Jon wasted no words. "The Night King is dead, but Cersei threatens the realm. We need your knights, Lord Baelish. Swear them to our cause." Baelish's eyes gleamed. "The Vale is loyal to House Arryn, and I speak for young Robin. But loyalty comes at a price. The north is yours, Aegon, and the south is hers. Where does that leave us?" Daenerys' voice was ice. "Join us, and you'll have a place in the new Westeros. Refuse, and the Vale will stand alone." Baelish chuckled, unfazed. "A generous offer, but I wonder, can two dragons rule as one? The Iron Throne seats only one, and the realm will not abide a divided house." Jon's temper flared, but he held it in check. "The throne can wait. Cersei won't. Give us your knights, or we'll take them." Baelish's smile didn't waver, but his eyes flickered with calculation. "Very well. The Vale's knights are yours, for now, but I'll expect considerations." The agreement was struck, but Jon felt the weight of Baelish's words. The man was a viper, and his loyalty would last only as long as his schemes. The Riverlands were next, a land ravaged by war. The Frolls were dead, their hold on the twins broken, but the region was a patchwork of feuding lords and bandit gangs. Jon's army marched through mud and ash, the dragon's presence keeping most threats at bay. Tormund's wildlings scouted ahead, their axes ready, while the Dothraki ranged wide, their arcs gleaming. At Riverrun, the Tully stronghold, Jon found Edmure Tully, a broken man freed from Frey captivity. His uncle, Brynden Blackfish, had died defending the castle, and Edmure's spirit seemed buried with him. But his name still carried weight, and Jon needed it. "Lord Edmure," Jon said, standing in Riverrun's hall, "the North and the South unite against Cersei. Rally the Riverlands, and we'll restore your house." Edmure's eyes were hollow. "The Riverlands are bled dry, boy. My sister Catelyn died for your brother's war. What's left to fight for?" Jon felt a pang at Catelyn's name, the woman who had raised him as a bastard, never knowing his true heritage. "Fight for the living," he said. "For the realm. The Night King is gone, but Cersei's tyranny remains. Help us end it." Daenerys spoke, her voice softer than usual. "House Tully will have justice, Lord Edmure. Join us, and we'll rebuild what was lost." Edmure hesitated, then nodded. "I'll call my banners. What's left of them?" The Riverlands lords were harder to sway. Some pledged fealty, drawn by Jon's victory over the Night King or Daenerys' dragons. Others held back, wary of another Targaryen war. Jon worked tirelessly, meeting with lords, promising aid, forging alliances. Daenerys' presence was a double-edged sword. Her power inspired awe, but her foreign armies sparked fear. One night, as the army camped near Harrenhal's cursed ruins, Jon found Daenerys by a fire, her dragons resting nearby. She looked weary, the loss of Viserion still raw. "You're good at this," she said, her voice quiet. "Winning hearts. The North loves you, the Riverlands respect you. Even the Vale listens." Jon sat beside her, ghost curling up at his feet. "It's not about love. It's about trust. The North trusts me because I'm one of them. You're a queen, Daenerys. They see your power, but they don't know your heart." Her eyes met his, searching. "And you? Do you know my heart?" Jon hesitated, feeling the pull of their shared blood. "I know you want a better world, but you want it on your terms. The realm won't bend that easily." She smiled, a rare vulnerability in her gaze. "Nor will you, Aegon. But perhaps that's why we need each other." For a moment the world narrowed to the two of them, dragons bound by fire and fate. But the moment passed and Jon stood, his resolve firm. "We'll face Cersei together. After that, we'll see." With the Vale and Riverlands secured, Jon and Daenerys turned south. Scouts reported Cersei's forces massing at King's Landing, bolstered by the Golden Company and Euron Greyjoy's Iron Fleet. The Lannister Queen was no fool. She knew 2 Targaryens were a threat she couldn't ignore. Jon's spies, led by Davos, brought word of wildfire caches beneath the city, a weapon Cersei would use without hesitation. The army camped at the Blackwater, the site of past battles, its waters glinting under a rare clear sky. Jon convened a war council, Daenerys at his side, their advisors arrayed around a map. Tyrion argued for a siege, starving Cersei out, while Jaime pushed for a direct assault, his hatred for his sister palpable. Tormund, ever blunt, suggested burning the city with dragon fire and being done with it. Jon rejected the last. "We're not here to destroy the realm. We take King's Landing, but we spare the innocent." Daenerys' eyes were hard. "Cersei will use the small folk as shields. If we hesitate, she'll burn the city herself." Tyrion nodded. "She's done it before. Wildfire is her weapon, and she's not above using it." Jon's mind raced. He thought of Ned Stark executed in that city, and Catelyn murdered at the Twins. He thought of his Targaryen ancestors, whose fire had forged the throne. "We'll strike at night," he said. "The dragons will target the Red Keep's defenses, the Unsullied will breach the gates, and the Northerners will hold the perimeter. No wildfire, no massacres." Daenerys agreed, though her expression suggested she'd burn the city if it came to it. The plan was set, but Jon felt a chill that had nothing to do with the winter air. The dragons' divide was widening, and the battle for King's Landing would test their pact to its breaking point. The attack began under a moonless sky. Drogon and Rhaegal soared over the city, their flames targeting the Red Keep's towers, while the Unsullied scaled the walls, their spears a silent tide. Jon led the Northerners and Wildlings, long claw in hand, ghost at his side. The Golden Company fought fiercely, their discipline unmatched, but the Dothraki's ferocity and the dragon's fire turned the tide. Jon fought through the streets, his blade carving a path toward the Red Keep. He saw Cersei's wildfire ignite in pockets, green flames consuming friend and foe alike. His heart sank, but he pressed on, driven by the need to end her reign. Tormund fought beside him, his axe a whirlwind, while ghosts tore through Lannister guards, his white fur stained with blood. Daenerys rode Drogon, her commands sharp as she directed the dragon's flames. Rhaegal flew alone, his green scales a beacon in the chaos. But Euron's Iron Fleet loosed scorpions from the harbor, their bolts aimed at the dragons. Jon shouted a warning, but a bolt struck Rhaegal's wing, sending him spiraling into the city. Daenerys' cry of rage echoed, and Drogon unleashed a torrent of fire that sank half the fleet. Jon reached the Red Keep, its gates shattered. Inside he found Jaime Lannister, bloodied but alive, facing Cersei in the throne room. The Iron Throne loomed behind her, its blades glinting in the firelight. Cersei's face was a mask of defiance, her hand clutching a vial of wildfire. "You can't win, brother," she said, her voice venomous. "If I fall, the city burns." Jaime's sword wavered, his love for his sister warring with his duty. Jon stepped forward, longclaw raised. "It's over, Cersei. Surrender and you'll live." She laughed, a brittle sound. "A Targaryen bastard and a traitor. You'll never hold this throne." Before Jon could respond, Jaime lunged, his sword piercing Cersei's heart. She gasped, the vial falling, and Jon caught it before it shattered. Cersei slumped, her blood pooling on the stone, and Jaime fell to his knees. his face a mask of grief. The battle ended with the Red Keep's fall. Daenerys landed in the courtyard, Drogon's wings casting a shadow over the ruins. She looked at Jon, then at the Iron Throne, her eyes burning with purpose. The city was theirs, but the cost was high. Rhaegal wounded, thousands dead, and the small folk cowering in fear. As dawn broke, Jon stood in the throne room, the Iron Throne a jagged silhouette against the shattered windows. Daenerys stood beside him, her presence a fire to his ice. The Northern Lords, Vale Knights, and Riverlands banners gathered, their faces a mix of triumph and unease. Tyrion and Jaime stood apart, the latter still reeling from Cersei's death. Daenerys spoke first, her voice ringing. "The usurper is dead. The Iron Throne is mine, as is my right. But I will not rule alone. Aegon Targaryen, you fought for this realm, bled for it. Stand with me, and we'll forge a new Westeros." The words were a challenge, a plea, a warning. Jon felt the weight of the room, the eyes of his allies, the pull of his heritage. The North had crowned him, but the realm needed unity. He thought of Sansa, of Ghost, of the dragon's fire that burned within him. "I am Aegon Targaryen," he said, his voice steady. "I fought for the living, and I'll keep fighting. But the North is my home, and I won't abandon it. Daenerys, you have my support, but not my knee. Rule the South, and I'll hold the North. For now." The room erupted in murmurs, some cheering, others dissenting. Daenerys' eyes narrowed, but she nodded, a grudging respect in her gaze. "So be it. 2 dragons, and 2 realms, but the throne is mine." Jon felt the divide deepen, the dragon's pact fraying. He had secured the realm, but at what cost? The North was his, but the South was hers, and the Iron Throne stood between them. As he left the throne room, Ghost at his side, he knew the true war was just beginning, not against the dead, but for the soul of Westeros. The air in King's Landing was heavy with the scent of ash and salt, the scars of battle still fresh on the city's stone. Aegon Targaryen, once Jon Snow, stood on the balcony of the Red Keep, overlooking the smoldering capital. The Iron Throne loomed behind him, its twisted blades a silent testament to the cost of power. Longclaw hung at his side, its direwolf pommel a reminder of his Stark roots, while Ghost, his white direwolf, lay at his feet, his red eyes scanning the horizon. The victory over Cersei Lannister had secured the city, but it had deepened the divide between Jon and Daenerys Targaryen, his aunt and rival. The North was his, the South hers, and the fragile pact that had united them against the Night King and Cersei now teetered on the edge of collapse. Jon's heart was heavy. He had embraced his Targaryen heritage, claiming the name Aegon, but the weight of that choice pressed harder each day. The Northern Lords, loyal to him as King in the North, bristled at Daenerys' claim to the Iron Throne. Her dragons, Drogon and the wounded Rhaegal, were a symbol of her power, but also a threat that unnerved the realm. Jon had refused to bend the knee, pledging his support without surrendering the North's independence. Daenerys had accepted, but her violet eyes burned with ambition, and Jon knew the question of the throne would not rest. Below, the city stirred. Daenerys' unsullied patrolled the streets, their discipline a stark contrast to the chaos of the small folk, who whispered of dragons and destruction. Tormund Giantsbane's wildlings camped outside the walls, their presence a source of tension with the Southerners. Davos Seaworth worked tirelessly to keep the peace, while Sansa, holding Winterfell, sent ravens urging Jon to return north. The realm was united in name, but its fractures ran deep, and Jon felt the dragon's burden, to hold it together or watch it burn. The great hall of the Red Keep was a cavern of echoes, its walls scarred from the battle. The Iron Throne dominated the room, its jagged edges catching the torchlight. Jon stood before it, Daenerys at his side, their advisors arrayed around them. Tyrion Lannister, her hand, watched with sharp eyes, while Sir Jaime Lannister, still haunted by Cersei's death, leaned against a pillar, his golden hand glinting. Tormund represented the North, his red beard a splash of color in the somber hall, while Missandei and Grey Worm spoke for Daenerys' eastern allies. The lords of the Vale and Riverlands, newly sworn to the cause, filled the benches, their faces a mix of awe and unease. Daenerys spoke first, her voice ringing with authority. "Cersei is dead, the Night King defeated, the 7 kingdoms are ours to rebuild. I am Daenerys Targaryen, rightful queen, and I will forge a new Westeros, one of justice, not tyranny. Jon felt the weight of her words, the unspoken challenge. He stepped forward, his voice steady. The realm is won, but not healed. The North stands with me, as do the Vale and Riverlands. We fought for the living, and will keep fighting for peace, not conquest. Lord Jon Royce of the Vale, his grizzled face stern, spoke up. The Vale swore to Aegon Targaryen, king in the North. We'll fight for the realm, but will not kneel to a southern throne. Edmure Tully, his spirit still fragile, nodded. The Riverlands are with you, Aegon, but we've bled enough. We want stability, not another war. Daenerys' lips tightened, but Tyrion intervened, his voice smooth. My lords, 2 Targaryens stand before you, a rare strength. Aegon holds the north, Daenerys the south. Together you can rule as allies, not rivals. Jaime snorted, his voice bitter. Allies? Dragons don't share thrones. You're fools if you think this ends without blood. Tormund laughed, a harsh sound. Let him try. The North knows its king, and he's no southern puppet. Jon raised a hand, silencing the room. No blood will be spilled here. Daenerys, you have my word. We'll rebuild together. But the North's independence stands. The realm needs both of us, not one above the other. Daenerys' eyes met his, a storm of fire and resolve. For now, Aegon, I accept. But the Iron Throne is mine. Rule the North, but do not challenge my birthright. The lords murmured, some nodding, others skeptical. Jon felt the tension, the dragon's divide threatening to split the realm anew. The meeting ended with a strained agreement. Daenerys would govern the south, and Jon the north, and they would work to restore the kingdom. But as Jon left the hall, ghosts at his heels, he knew the peace was as fragile as ice. Jon's days in King's Landing were a blur of councils and decrees. Daenerys focused on the south, dispatching Unsullied to quell unrest in the Stormlands, and Dothraki to patrol the Reach. Her dragons, though weakened, were a constant presence, their roars echoing over the city. Jon worked with the northern lords, securing supply lines to Winterfell and negotiating trade with the Vale. But the small folk's fear of dragons grew, and whispers of Mad Queen followed Daenerys, fueled by Cersei's wildfire and the city's scars. A raven from Sansa brought urgency. The North grows restless, she wrote. The lords accept you as king, but Daenerys' influence spreads. Return to Winterfell, or you risk losing them. Jon knew she was right. The North was his anchor, and he could not rule from the south. He resolved to return, but not before addressing the growing rift with Daenerys. He found her in the dragon pit, tending to Rhaegal, whose wing was healing but still fragile. Drogon loomed nearby, his black scales glinting. Daenerys' face softened as she stroked Rhaegal's snout, but her eyes were guarded when she saw Jon. You're leaving, she said, not a question. Jon nodded, Ghost sitting at his side. The North needs me. Sansa says the lords are wavering. If I stay here, I will lose them. Daenerys' expression hardened. And what of the realm? You speak of unity, Aegon, but you cling to the North like a child to a mother's skirt. The Iron Throne rules all 7 kingdoms, not just one. Jon felt a spark of anger, but he tempered it. I'm not abandoning the realm. I'm holding it together. The North won't follow you, Daenerys. Not yet. Let me keep them loyal, and we'll face the future together. She stepped closer, her voice low. And what future is that? 2 kings, 2 queens. The realm will tear itself apart. You're a Targaryen, Aegon. Act like one. The words stung, echoing his own doubts. He thought of Ned Stark, who had raised him as a son, and Lyanna, whose love for Rhaegar had birthed him. I am a Targaryen, he said, but I'm also a Stark. I won't burn the North to prove my blood. Daenerys studied him, a flicker of respect in her gaze. Go then. Hold your North. But know this. The throne is mine, and I will defend it. Jon left the dragon pit, his resolve firm but his heart heavy. The dragon's burden was his alone, and the path ahead was fraught with peril. The journey north was grueling, the snows deepening with each mile. Jon rode with Tormund, Ghost loping beside them, while a small retinue of northerners and wildlings followed. The Vale Knights remained in the south, sworn to the alliance, but their absence weighed on Jon. He needed every sword, every heart, to keep the realm whole. Winterfell was a beacon in the White Waste, its walls stronger than when Jon had left. Sansa greeted him in the courtyard, her embrace fierce. "You're home," she said, her voice thick with relief. "For now," Jon replied, his eyes scanning the castle. The direwolf banner flew beside the Targaryen dragon, a symbol of his dual heritage, but he saw the strain in the faces of the guards, the whispers among the small folk. In the great hall the northern lords gathered, their loyalty tempered by doubt. Lyanna Mormont spoke first, her voice sharp. "You left us for the South, King Aegon. Now you return with tales of dragons and thrones. Why should we trust you won't abandon us again?" Jon met her gaze unflinching. "I went south to save the realm. Cersei's dead. The Night King's gone. I'm here to hold the North. As your king." Wyman Manderly's jowls quivered as he spoke. "And what of Daenerys? Her dragons darken our skies. Her armies march our roads. The North crowned you, not her." Jon raised a hand, silencing the murmurs. "Daenerys is our ally, not our ruler. She holds the South, I hold the North. Together we'll rebuild. But I need you, every lord, every man, to stand with me." The lords nodded, some reluctantly, and the meeting ended with a renewed pledge of fealty. But Jon felt the fragility of their trust. The North was his, but only as long as he proved himself their king, not a southern dragon. Days passed, and Jon threw himself into the North's restoration. He oversaw repairs to Winterfell's defenses, distributed grain to starving villages, and trained with Tormund's wildlings, their axes a comfort in the cold. Ghost was his constant shadow, his presence a reminder of the Stark blood that grounded him. But the dragon's whisper grew louder, urging him to claim more than the North, to challenge Daenerys for the throne that was his by right. A raven from King's Landing brought news. Daenerys had declared herself Queen of the Seven Kingdoms, her coronation set for the next moon. She invited Jon to attend, a gesture of unity, but the message was clear. She was staking her claim, and he was expected to acknowledge it. Sansa's eyes blazed as she read the letter. "She's forcing your hand," she said, pacing the solar. "If you go, you'll be seen as her vassal. If you stay, you defy her, and the South will turn against you." Jon's jaw tightened. "I don't want a war, Sansa, but I won't kneel." "Then don't," she said, her voice fierce. "You're Aegon Targaryen, heir to Rhaegar. The throne is yours by right, not hers. Claim it, Jon, or she'll take everything." The words shook him. He had fought for the living, not for power, but Sansa's logic was undeniable. Daenerys' ambition would not stop at the South, and the North's independence hung by a thread. He thought of his parents, Rhaegar and Lyanna, whose love had sparked a war. He was their legacy, a dragon raised as a wolf, and the time for choosing was near. That night Jon walked the Godswood, Ghost at his side. The heart tree's red eyes seemed to watch him, its silence a challenge. He knelt, seeking clarity, and for the first time he felt a stir, a warmth in his veins, the dragon's fire answering his call. He rose, his resolve hardening. He would go to King's Landing, not to kneel, but to face Daenerys as an equal. The realm needed both dragons, but only one could rule. Jon arrived in King's Landing under a sky of iron clouds, Ghost at his side, Tormund and a small northern retinue behind him. The city was transformed, its streets cleaner, its people fed, but the tension was palpable. Daenerys' banners hung from every tower, the three-headed dragon a constant reminder of her reign. Drogon perched on the Red Keep, his eyes tracking Jon's approach, while Rhaegal, still healing, rested in the dragon pit. The coronation was held in the Great Hall, the iron throne gleaming under a canopy of silk. Daenerys stood before it, resplendent in black and red, her crown a circlet of dragonbone. The lords of the South, Dorne, the Reach, the Stormlands, knelt before her, their oaths ringing out. Tyrion stood at her side, his face unreadable, while Jaime Lannister watched from the shadows, his loyalty uncertain. Jon entered late, his black cloak stark against the hall's opulence. Ghost's presence drew gasps, his white fur a symbol of the North's defiance. Daenerys' eyes met Jon's, a flicker of challenge in her gaze. "Aegon Targaryen, king in the North," she said, her voice carrying. "You honor us with your presence. Will you swear fealty to your queen?" The hall fell silent, every eye on Jon. He felt the weight of the moment, the dragon's burden pressing down. He thought of Sansa, of Winterfell, of the North's trust. He thought of Rhaegar, whose dream of a better world had died with him. Jon was no dreamer, but he was a Targaryen, and he would not yield. "I am Aegon Targaryen, son of Rhaegar," he said, his voice clear. I fought for the living as you did, Daenerys. The North stands with me, and I stand for the realm. I'll work with you, but I won't kneel. The throne is yours, for now, but the future belongs to all of us." The hall erupted in whispers, some lords cheering, others muttering. Daenerys' face was a mask, but her eyes burned with fire. Tyrion stepped forward, his voice cutting through the noise. "A bold stance, Your Grace. Let us celebrate this unity and build a realm worthy of 2 dragons." The coronation continued, but Jon felt the shift. He had declared himself Daenerys' equal, and the realm would not forget. As he left the hall, Ghost at his side, he caught Jaime's eye. The Kingslayer nodded, a rare gesture of respect, and Jon knew he had allies, however unlikely. That night, Jon stood on the Red Keep's balcony, the city sprawling below. Ghost nuzzled his hand, a low growl rumbling in his throat. Jon felt the dragon's fire in his veins, stronger now, a call to action. He had secured the north, allied with the south, but the throne remained a wedge between him and Daenerys. The realm needed unity, but at what cost? A shadow moved, and Daenerys appeared, her silver hair catching the moonlight. "You surprised me today," she said, her voice soft but edged. "I thought you'd kneel, or fight. Instead, you chose a third path." Jon met her gaze unflinching. "I chose the realm. You want the throne, Daenerys? And you have it. But I want the north, and I'll keep it." She stepped closer, her presence a fire to his ice. "And if the realm demands one ruler, one dragon?" "Then we'll face that day," Jon said, his voice steady. "But not today. Today we rebuild. Together." Daenerys studied him, a smile touching her lips. "You're more Targaryen than you know, Aegon. But be warned, fire burns those who defy it." She turned and left, her words lingering like smoke. Jon looked to Ghost, then to the stars, the dragon's burden heavier than ever. He was Aegon Targaryen, king in the north, heir to a legacy of fire and blood. The throne was Daenerys's, but the realm was his to protect, and he would face whatever came, dragon and queen or war. The winds over King's Landing carried the bite of winter, even in the south, where much snow dusted the Red Keep's towers. Aegon Targaryen, once Jon Snow, stood in the shadow of the Iron Throne, its jagged blades a stark reminder of the power he had chosen not to claim. Longclaw rested at his hip, its direwolf pommel a tether to his Stark heritage, while Ghost, his white direwolf, paced silently, red eyes glinting in the torchlight. The coronation of Daenerys Targaryen had solidified her rule over the south, but Jon's refusal to bend the knee had drawn a line in the snow. The north remained his, its lords loyal to their king in the north, but the fragile alliance with Daenerys teetered on the edge of fracture. Jon's heart was a battlefield. He had embraced his Targaryen heritage, claiming the name Aegon, son of Rhaegar and Lyanna, but the Stark honor instilled by Ned Stark anchored him to the north. The dragon's fire in his veins urged him toward a greater destiny, yet the memory of Winterfell's godswood, of Sansa's fierce loyalty, kept him grounded. Daenerys was his kin, his aunt, a queen of fire and blood, but her ambition burned too brightly, and Jon feared it would consume the realm he had fought to save. The city below buzzed with uneasy life. Daenerys' Unsullied patrolled the streets, their discipline a bulwark against the small folk's growing unrest. Her dragons, Drogon and the recovering Rhaegal, roosted in the dragon pit, their presence both a shield and a threat. Tormund Giantsbane's wildlings camped outside the walls clashed with southerners, their rough ways sparking tension. Davos Seaworth worked tirelessly to mediate, but even his plain-spoken wisdom could not quell the whispers. 2 dragons, 1 throne. Who will rule? Jon knew he could not linger in King's Landing. The north called, its lords demanding his presence, and Sansa's ravens grew more urgent. Return, or lose the north to doubt. But leaving meant risking Daenerys' wrath, and the realm's fragile unity hung by a thread. The dragon's reckoning was at hand, and Jon would need all his strength, Stark ice and Targaryen fire, to face it. The great hall of the Red Keep was a crucible of tension, its air thick with the scent of wax and steel. Jon stood at one end of a long table, Daenerys at the other, their advisors a wary circle around a map of Westeros. Tyrion Lannister, her hand, fidgeted with a goblet, his sharp eyes darting between them. Sir Jaime Lannister, still scarred by Cersei's death, leaned against a wall, his golden hand a silent accusation. Tormund represented the north, his red beard a blaze of defiance, while Missandei and Grey Worm spoke for Daenerys' eastern allies. Lords from the Vale, Riverlands, and South filled the benches, their faces etched with fatigue and doubt. Daenerys spoke first, her voice a blade sheathed in silk. "The realm is ours, but it bleeds. The Stormlands fester with rebellion, the Reach starves, and the Ironborn raid our coasts. I am your queen, and I will heal this land, but I need your loyalty, not your divisions." Jon felt the weight of her gaze, the unspoken challenge. He stepped forward, his voice steady. "The North stands with the realm, but we stand as equals. The Night King is dead, Cersei defeated. We've earned our place, Daenerys. Not as subjects, but as allies." Lord Jon Royce of the Vale, his grizzled face stern, nodded. "The Vale swore to Aegon Targaryen, not a southern queen. We'll fight for Westeros, but will not kneel." Edmure Tully, his voice stronger than before, added, "The Riverlands are with Aegon. We've rebuilt what we could, but we need aid, not commands." Tyrion cleared his throat, his tone diplomatic. "My lords, unity is our strength. 2 Targaryens ruling together could mend the realm. Aegon, you hold the north. Daenerys, the south. Why not formalize this? Co-rulers, not rivals." Jaime laughed, a bitter sound. "Co-rulers. The Iron Throne seats 1, not 2. You're dreaming, brother, and dreams get men killed." Tormund growled, his hand on his axe. "Let the South keep its chair. The North has its king, and he's worth 10 of your queens." Daenerys' eyes flashed, but she held her composure. "The throne is mine, by right and conquest. Aegon, you've proven yourself a leader, but the realm cannot abide 2 crowns. Join me, truly, or we risk war." The word hung heavy. War. Jon's hand rested on Longclaw, his mind racing. He thought of Sansa, holding Winterfell, and the northern lords who had bled for him. He thought of the Night King's fall, of Cersei's wildfire, of the cost of every victory. "I want peace, Daenerys," he said, his voice low but firm. "The North will work with you, but we won't kneel. Send aid to the Riverlands, grain to the Reach, and we'll hold the realm together." Daenerys studied him, her expression unreadable. "Very well, for now we rule as allies. But the throne is not a council table, Aegon. One day you'll have to choose." The council ended with a strained agreement. Daenerys would send resources to the struggling regions, while Jon would return to the north to secure its loyalty. But as Jon left the hall, Ghost at his heels, he felt the fractures widening. The dragon's reckoning was not a battle, but a choice, one he could no longer delay. Jon's journey to Winterfell was a slog through deepening snows, the wind a constant howl. Tormund rode beside him, his wildling humor a spark in the cold, while Ghost loped ahead, his white fur a beacon. A small retinue of northerners followed, their faces grim but loyal. The south had drained Jon, its intrigues a far cry from the north's stark honesty, and he longed for Winterfell's walls, for Sansa's council, for the godswood silence. The castle was a fortress of ice and stone when they arrived, its banners, direwolf and dragon, snapping in the wind. Sansa greeted Jon in the courtyard, her embrace fierce, her auburn hair dusted with snow. "You're back," she said, her voice thick with relief. "The North was starting to forget you." Jon managed a faint smile. I'd never forget the North, Sansa. It's home." In the great hall the northern lords gathered, their loyalty a fire that needed tending. Lyanna Mormont, fierce as ever, spoke first. "You stood against the southern queen, King Aegon, and we're proud, but her dragons cast a long shadow. What's your plan?" Jon stood before them, Ghost at his side. Longclaw waited his hip. "Daenerys is our ally, not our ruler. She's sending aid, grain, gold, men, to rebuild the North and Riverlands. We'll hold our independence, but we'll work with her to heal the realm." Wyman Manderly's jowls quivered as he nodded. "Fair words, but what of the throne? She's crowned herself queen, and you're Rhaegar's heir. The North crowned you king. Will you claim what's yours?" The question pierced Jon. He had fought for the living, not for power, but the dragon's blood whispered of his birthright. "The throne can wait," he said, his voice steady. "The North comes first. We rebuild, we strengthen, and we prepare. If Daenerys oversteps, we'll face her. Together." The lords cheered, their doubts eased for now, but Jon felt the weight of their trust, fragile as frost. He spent the days that followed in action, overseeing repairs to Winterfell's walls, distributing southern aid to starving villages, training with Tormund's wildlings. Ghost was his shadow, his snarls a reminder of the wildness that bound Jon to the north. At night, Jon sought solace in the godswood, the heart tree's red eyes a silent witness. He knelt, long claw across his knees, and prayed for guidance. The old gods were quiet, but the dragon's fire in his veins was not. It urged him to claim the Iron Throne, to challenge Daenerys, to fulfill Rhaegar's dream of a united realm. But the Stark in him resisted, whispering of duty, of home, of the North's fierce independence. Sansa found him there, her cloak wrapped tight against the cold. "You're troubled," she said, sitting beside him. "I see it in your eyes. The South changed you." Jon looked at her, the sister who knew him best. "It's not the South, it's me. I'm Aegon Targaryen, Sansa, but I'm also Jon Snow. The dragon wants the throne, but the wolf wants the north. I don't know how to be both." Sansa's gaze was steady. You've always been both. You fought the Night King, won Winterfell, faced Cersei. You're not just a king. You're our king. But Daenerys won't stop at the south. She'll come for the north, and you need to be ready." Jon's jaw tightened. "I don't want war. Not with her." "Then outmaneuver her," Sansa said, her voice sharp. "Strengthen the north, rally the Vale and Riverlands, build alliances. You're Rhaegar's heir, Jon. The throne is yours by right, whether you want it or not." The words struck deep. Jon thought of his parents, Rhaegar and Lyanna, whose love had birthed him in fire and blood. He was their legacy, and the realm was his burden. "I'll hold the north," he said finally, "and I'll face Daenerys, not as an enemy, but as an equal." Sansa nodded, a flicker of pride in her eyes. "Good. The north is with you, Jon, always." Ravens from King's Landing brought the troubling news. Daenerys' rule was firm, but cracks were forming. The Stormlands, led by a Baratheon bastard, rebelled against her taxes. The Reach, though fed, chafed under Dothraki patrols. The Ironborn, under Yara Greyjoy, honored their alliance, but demanded autonomy. Daenerys' dragons kept the peace, but whispers of Mad Queen grew louder, fueled by the small folk's fear of fire. A letter from Davos left in the south to advise Daenerys was blunt. "The Queen's justice is swift, but it's breeding resentment. She needs you, Jon, to balance her fire. Return, or the south will turn." Jon felt the pull, but the north was his priority. He sent a reply, promising aid but reaffirming the north's independence, and dispatched Tormund with a small force to bolster the Riverlands, a gesture of goodwill. One evening as Jon trained in Winterfell's courtyard, a stranger arrived, a hooded figure, escorted by guards. The man knelt, revealing a weathered face and a sigil Jon recognized, a mockingbird. Peter Baelish, Lord Protector of the Vale, had come unannounced. "King Aegon," Baelish said, his voice smooth as oil. "The Vale remains loyal, but I bring a warning. Daenerys' rule falters. The South distrusts her, and the North distrusts you for allying with her. Step carefully, or you'll lose both." Jon's hand rested on Longclaw, Ghost growling at his side. "Speak plainly, Littlefinger. What do you want?" Baelish's smile was a blade. "Power as always. Support my claim to the Vale's regency, and then I'll ensure its knights stand with you, not her. The Iron Throne is yours by right, Aegon. Take it before she burns it to ash." Jon's temper flared, but he held it in check. "The North doesn't play your games. Return to the Vale, and keep your knights ready. We fight for the realm, not for you." Baelish bowed, his eyes glinting with calculation, and left. Jon knew the man's words were poison, but they held a kernel of truth. Daenerys' fire was a double-edged sword, and the realm's loyalty was slipping. Weeks later, a raven brought a summons. Daenerys requested Jon's presence in King's Landing to address the Stormlands rebellion. The tone was formal, but Jon sensed urgency. He knew refusing would signal defiance, but going meant facing her on her terms. Sansa urged caution, but Jon saw no choice. The realm's unity depended on their alliance, and he would not let it crumble. He rode south with Tormund, Ghost, and a small retinue, arriving under a sky heavy with storm clouds. King's Landing was a city on edge, its streets tense, its people wary. Drogon perched on the Red Keep, his roar shaking the air while Rhaegal, nearly healed, circled above. Daenerys greeted Jon in the throne room, the Iron Throne a stark backdrop. Tyrion and Jaime stood at her side, their faces grim. Aegon, Daenerys said, her voice cool but strained. The Stormlands defy me, and the Reach wavers. I need the North's support, your support, to show the realm we stand as one. Jon met her gaze unflinching. The North sent aid to the Riverlands as promised. We'll send men to the Stormlands, but we fight as allies, not subjects. You're a queen, Daenerys, but the North has its king. Her eyes narrowed, a spark of fire in them. Allies! You speak of unity, yet you hold the North apart. The realm sees 2 dragons, not 1 ruler. How long before they turn against us both? Tyrion stepped forward, his voice urgent. Your grace, Aegon, the rebellion is a spark. Quell it together, and the realm will see your strength. Divide, and we fall. Jaime's voice was sharp. He's right for once. The Stormlands laugh at your alliance. Show them fire, or they'll carve you both to pieces. Jon felt the dragon's fire stir, but he tempered it with stark resolve. I'll ride with you, Daenerys. We'll face the Stormlands together, but the North's terms stand. No kneeling, no throne. Daenerys studied him, a flicker of respect in her gaze. So be it. We ride at dawn. The march to the Stormlands was swift, Jon's Northerners and Wildlings joining Daenerys' Unsullied and Dothraki. Drogon and Rhaegal flew overhead, their shadows a warning to rebels. The Stormlands leader, a Baratheon bastard named Gendry Waters, held Storm's End, his banners a mockery of Robert Stagg. Jon knew Gendry from his days at Castle Black, a smith-turned-lord, and hoped to avoid bloodshed. At Storm's End, Gendry met them under a flag of truce, his hammer resting on his shoulder. Aegon, Daenerys, he said, his voice rough. I don't want war, but the Stormlands won't bow to dragons. Your taxes choke us, your Dothraki raid our lands. Give us freedom and we'll stand down. Daenerys' voice was ice. Freedom? You defy your queen and call it freedom? Kneel or burn? Jon stepped forward, his hand raised. Gendry, you know me. I fought for the living, not for power. The North stands with the realm, but we don't kneel. Join us as equals and we'll rebuild together. Gendry's eyes softened, but his resolve held. Equals? She's no equal, Aegon. She's a conqueror. I'll talk, but only with you. Daenerys' face darkened, but Jon pressed on, negotiating terms. After hours of tense debate, Gendry agreed to pledge loyalty in exchange for reduced taxes and autonomy. The rebellion ended without fire, but Jon felt Daenerys' anger, her pride wounded by his diplomacy. That night in their camp she confronted him, her voice low and fierce. You undermined me, Aegon. The realm sees you as the peacemaker, me as the tyrant. Is that your game? Jon met her gaze unflinching. My game is survival. You'd have burned Storm's End and the realm would hate you for it. I saved your throne, Daenerys. Her eyes blazed, but she stepped back, a grudging nod her only reply. Jon knew the dragon's reckoning had only been delayed. The realm was theirs, but the divide between them grew, and the Iron Throne remained a wedge that could shatter everything. As they returned to King's Landing, Jon stood on a hill, Ghost at his side, watching Drogon soar above. The dragon's fire was a mirror of his own, a power he could no longer deny. He was Aegon Targaryen, heir to Rhaegar, and the realm was his burden. Daenerys was his kin, his ally, but her fire threatened to consume what they had built. The North was his heart, but the South was his duty, and the throne stood between them. He thought of Lyanna, whose love had birthed him, and Ned, who had raised him. He thought of Sansa, Tormund, Ghost, the anchors of his world. The dragon's reckoning was not a war, but a choice, to rule with fire or to protect with ice. Jon knew he could not avoid it forever, but for now, he would hold the North, strengthen the realm, and face Daenerys as an equal. As he mounted his horse, Ghost's growl a low promise, Jon felt the dragon's resolve harden. The final reckoning was coming, and he would meet it. Not as Jon Snow, not as Aegon Targaryen, but as both, a king of ice and fire. The sky over King's Landing was a tapestry of storm clouds, the air heavy with the promise of snow. Aegon Targaryen, once Jon Snow, stood on the ramparts of the Red Keep, his black cloak snapping in the wind. Longclaw hung at his side, its direwolf pommel a symbol of his Stark roots, while Ghost, his white direwolf, sat beside him, red eyes piercing the gloom. The Iron Throne loomed within the keep, a jagged monument to power and division. Daenerys Targaryen, his aunt and ally, ruled the South as queen, her dragons Drogon and Rhaegal a constant presence over the city. But Jon, king in the north, had refused to bend the knee, and the fragile alliance that had defeated the Night King and Cersei Lannister now frayed under the weight of their shared blood and rival claims. Jon's heart was a crucible of ice and fire. He had embraced his Targaryen heritage, claiming the name Aegon, son of Rhaegar and Lyanna, but the Stark honor instilled by Ned Stark bound him to the north. The dragon's fire in his veins roared for the Iron Throne, his birthright as royal Rhaegar's heir, yet the North's loyalty, forged in blood at Winterfell, demanded he protect its independence. Daenerys was a queen of fire, her ambition a blaze that could unite or destroy the realm. Their pact had held through war and rebellion, but the Stormlands' defiance and the South's unrest had exposed its cracks. The dragon's destiny was at hand, and Jon knew the realm could not abide two dragons forever. Below, King's Landing stirred uneasily. Daenerys' Unsullied patrolled the streets, their spears gleaming while her Dothraki clashed with small folk, their raids fueling resentment. Tormund Giantsbane's wildlings, camped outside the walls, were a thorn in the city's side, their presence a reminder of Jon's northern roots. Sansa's ravens from Winterfell urged him to return, warning that the northern lords grew restless under Daenerys' shadow. The Vale and Riverlands sworn to Jon wavered, their loyalty tested by the South's turmoil. The dragon's reckoning had been delayed, but it could not be avoided. Jon felt the weight of his choices, the burden of a realm teetering on the edge of the war. The great hall of the Red Keep was a cauldron of tension, its walls scarred from the battle that had felled Cersei. The Iron Throne dominated the room, its blades glinting like teeth in the torchlight. Jon stood before it, Daenerys at his side, their advisors a wary circle around a map of Westeros. Tyrion Lannister, her hand, watched with guarded eyes, while Sir Jaime Lannister, haunted by his sister's death, stood apart, his golden hand a silent weight. Tormund represented the north, his red beard a blaze of defiance, while Missandei and Grey Worm spoke for Daenerys' eastern allies. Lords from the Vale, Riverlands, Dorne, and the Reach filled the benches, their faces a mix of hope and dread. Daenerys spoke first, her voice clear and commanding. "The realm is ours, but it fractures. The Stormlands kneel, but their hearts are rebellious. The Reach starves, the Ironborn raid, and the North holds itself apart. I am your queen, and I will forge a united Westeros, but I cannot do it alone." Jon felt her gaze, a challenge wrapped in kinship. He stepped forward, his voice steady. "The North fought for the living, as did you, Daenerys. We defeated the Night King, ended Cersei's tyranny. But the North will not kneel. We stand as allies, not subjects, and will rebuild the realm together." Lord Jon Royce of the Vale, his voice gruff, spoke up. "The Vale swore to Aegon Targaryen, king in the North. We'll fight for the realm, but will not bow to a southern throne." Edmure Tully, his spirit hardened by war, nodded. "The Riverlands stand with Aegon. We have rebuilt, but we need a king who knows our pain, not a queen who rules with fire." Tyrion's voice cut through the murmurs, smooth but urgent. "My lords, two Targaryens are a strength, not a weakness. Aegon, you hold the north, Daenerys the south. Rule as partners, and the realm will heal." Jaime snorted, his tone bitter. "Partners? The throne seats one, not two. You're delaying the inevitable, brother. Dragons don't share." Tormund's hand rested on his axe, his grin fierce. "Let the South keep its chair. The North has its king, and he's worth more than your dragon queen." Daenerys' eyes blazed, but she held her composure. "Enough. Aegon, you've proven yourself a leader, but the realm cannot own two crowns. The Iron Throne is mine, by right and conquest. Bend the knee, or we risk everything we've fought for." The ultimatum hung like a blade. Jon's hand rested on Longclaw, his mind racing. He thought of Sansa, holding Winterfell and the northern lords who had crowned him. He thought of the Night King's icy gaze, of Cersei's wildfire, of the blood spilled to save the realm. Bending the knee would secure peace, but it would betray the North. Refusing could spark war, dragon against dragon, and the realm would burn. "I want the realm to heal," Jon said, his voice low but resolute. "The North will stand with you, Daenerys, as allies, but I won't kneel. The throne is yours, but the North is mine. Let's rebuild together, and let the future decide." Daenerys' lips tightened, her fire barely contained. "The future? The realm needs one ruler, Aegon. You delay the choice, but it will come. For now, we rule as allies, but do not test my patience." The hall erupted in murmurs, some lords nodding, others whispering dissent. Jon felt the divide deepen, the dragon's destiny a shadow over them all. The council ended with a fragile truce. Daenerys would govern the south, Jon the north, and they would address the realm's wounds together. But as Jon left, Ghost at his heels, he knew the peace was a spark in a storm. Jon returned to Winterfell, the journey a slog through snow and ice. Tormund rode beside him, his wildling humor a light in the dark, while Ghost loped ahead, his white fur blending with the drifts. The north was his heart, its people his kin, and Jon felt the weight of their trust as he approached the castle's gates. The direwolf and dragon banners flew side by side, a symbol of his dual heritage, but the guards' faces were grim, their loyalty tempered by fear of Daenerys' fire. Sansa greeted him in the courtyard, her embrace fierce, her auburn hair catching the torchlight. "You defied her," she said, her voice a mix of pride and worry. "The North is proud, but the South won't forget." Jon nodded, his jaw tight. "I didn't defy her, Sansa. I chose the North. But the realm needs both of us, and I won't let it fall to war." In the great hall, the northern lords gathered, their voices a chorus of loyalty and doubt. Lyanna Mormont, fierce as ever, spoke first. "You stood against the Dragon Queen, King Aegon, and we stand with you, but her fire looms. What's your plan?" Jon stood before them, Ghost at his side, Longclaw a weight at his hip. "Daenerys is our ally, not our enemy. She's sending aid, grain, gold, men, to rebuild the North and Riverlands. We'll hold our independence, strengthen our defenses, and prepare for what's next. If she oversteps, we'll face her. Together." Wyman Manderly's jowls quivered as he nodded. "The North trusts you, lad, but you're Rhaegar's heir. The throne is yours by right. Will you claim it?" The question struck deep. Jon had fought for the living, not for power, but the dragon's blood roared, urging him to seize his birthright. "The throne isn't my goal," he said, his voice steady. "The North is. We rebuild, we unite, and we protect our home. If the throne becomes a threat, I'll face it, not for power, but for us." The lords cheered, their doubts eased, and Jon felt their trust solidify. He spent the days that followed in action, fortifying Winterfell, distributing southern aid, training with Tormund's wildlings. Ghost was his shadow, his snarls a reminder of the wildness that bound Jon to the north, but the dragon's fire burned brighter, whispering of a destiny he could not escape. Ravens from King's Landing brought troubling news. Daenerys' rule was firm, but the south chafed under her hand. The Stormlands, though subdued, simmered with resentment. The Reach, fed by her grain, distrusted her Dothraki. The Ironborn, led by Yara Greyjoy, honored their alliance, but demanded more autonomy. Drogon and Rhaegal kept the peace, but their fire fueled whispers of Mad Queen, a shadow of her father's legacy. Davos, advising Daenerys, wrote, "Her justice is swift, but it breeds fear. She needs your balance, Jon. The realm needs both dragons." Jon felt the pull, but the north was his priority. He sent aid to the Riverlands, bolstering Edmure Tully's efforts, and dispatched Tormund to the Vale to secure Jon Royce's knights. The north grew stronger, its people fed, its walls fortified, but Jon knew the south's unrest could not be ignored. Daenerys' fire was a double-edged sword, and the realm's loyalty was slipping. One evening, a stranger arrived at Winterfell, a cloaked figure escorted by guards. The man revealed himself as Varys, the Spider, his bald head gleaming in the torchlight. "King Aegon," he said, bowing low, "I come with a warning. Daenerys' fire goes unchecked. She burns rebels without trial, and the small folk fear her. You are Rhaegar's heir, the true king. Act, or the realm will suffer." Jon's hand rested on Longclaw, Ghost growling at his side. "I know you, Varys. You weave webs, not truths. Why should I trust you?" Varys' smile was faint. "Because I serve the realm, not the throne. Daenerys means well, but her fire will consume what she seeks to save. You are ice and fire, Aegon. Only you can balance her." Jon dismissed him, but Varys' words lingered. The dragon's destiny was not just to rule, but to protect. He thought of his parents, Rhaegar and Lyanna, whose love had birthed him in defiance of a kingdom. He was their legacy, and the realm was his burden. A raven from Daenerys summoned Jon to Dragonstone, her ancestral seat, for a summit to address the realm's future. The tone was urgent, and Jon knew refusing would signal war. Sansa urged caution, but Jon saw no choice. The realm's unity depended on their alliance, and he would face Daenerys as an equal, not a rival. He sailed to Dragonstone with Tormund, Ghost, and a small retinue, the sea a grey mirror of his thoughts. The island loomed, its black stone towers carved with dragons, a reminder of his Targaryen blood. Daenerys greeted him on the shore, Drogon and Rhaegal perched above, their eyes glowing like furnaces. Tyrion and Jaime stood at her side, their faces tense, while Missandei and Grey Worm watched silently. "Aegon," Daenerys said, her voice warm but edged. "The realm frays. The south rebels, the north isolates. We must show the world we are one, or we'll lose everything." Jon met her gaze, Ghost at his side. "The north stands with the realm, Daenerys. We've sent aid, strengthened our allies, but we won't kneel. The throne is yours, but the north is mine." Her eyes narrowed, a storm brewing. "The throne rules all 7 kingdoms, Aegon. You speak of alliance, but you hold yourself apart. The realm sees 2 dragons, not 1 ruler. Choose. Stand with me, or stand against me." Tyrion's voice was urgent. "Your Grace, Aegon, the realm needs you both. A joint rule. Co-regents, share in power, could silence the rebels and unite the kingdoms." Jaime's tone was sharp. "A fantasy, brother. The throne seats one. Pick a side, Aegon, or the realm will pick it for you." Jon felt the dragon's fire roar, but he tempered it with stark resolve. "I choose the realm," he said, his voice clear. "I'll rule the north, you rule the south. We'll rebuild together as equals. But if you force the north to kneel, you'll face me, not as kin, but as king." The words hung heavy, a challenge and a plea. Daenerys' face was a mask, but her eyes burned with fire. "You test me, Aegon, very well. We rule as equals for now, but the realm will not abide this forever." The summit ended with a tense agreement. Jon and Daenerys would govern their regions, coordinating aid and defense, but the question of the throne remained unresolved. As Jon sailed back to the north, Ghost's growl a low promise he knew the dragon's destiny was near. Back at Winterfell, Jon threw himself into the north's strength. He fortified castles, trained armies, and rallied the lords, their loyalty a fire that warmed his heart. Sansa stood at his side, her counsel sharp, while Tormund's wildlings bolstered the ranks. Ghost was his shadow, his white fur a symbol of the North's wild heart. The dragon's fire burned within Jon, but the Stark ice kept it in check, guiding him to protect, not conquer. Ravens from the south brought news of Daenerys' struggles. Her justice grew harsher, her dragons burning rebels without mercy. The small folk called her Mad Queen, and lords began to whisper of Aegon, the king who balanced fire with ice. Varys' words echoed in Jon's mind. "Only you can balance her." One night in the Godswood, Jon knelt before the heart tree, Longclaw across his knees. The red eyes of the weirwood seemed to watch, its silence a challenge. He prayed for guidance, and for the first time he felt a clarity, a merging of ice and fire, Stark and Targaryen. He was Aegon, heir to Rhaegar, but also Jon, son of the North. The realm needed both, and he would forge a path between them. Sansa found him there, her voice soft. "You've decided, haven't you?" Jon rose, his resolve iron. "The realm can't have 2 dragons, Sansa. Daenerys' fire will burn it, or mine will freeze it. I'll go to her one last time, not to kneel, not to fight, but to offer a choice." Sansa's eyes gleamed with pride. "You're our king, Jon. Whatever comes, the north is yours." Jon rode to King's Landing, Ghost at his side, Tormund and a small retinue behind. The city was a powder keg, its streets tense, its people fearful. Drogon perched on the Red Keep, his roar a warning, while Rhaegal circled above. Daenerys met Jon in the throne room, the Iron Throne a jagged shadow between them. Tyrion and Jaime watched, their faces grim, while the lords of the south gathered, their eyes on the 2 dragons. "Aegon," Daenerys said, her voice a mix of fire and sorrow. "The realm breaks, rebels rise, lords betray. I am queen, but they call me mad. You've won their hearts, but you refuse my throne. Why have you come?" Jon stepped forward, Ghost at his side, Longclaw weighted at his hip. "I came for the realm, Daenerys. You're my kin, my ally, but your fire burns too bright. The throne is yours, but it's tearing us apart. Step down, rule the south as governor, not queen. Let the realm heal, with both of us as equals." Her eyes widened, a storm of rage and pain. "Step down? I am Daenerys Targaryen, born to rule. You who claim Rhaegar's name would have me kneel to you?" "Not kneel," Jon said, his voice steady. "Stand beside me. The throne seat's one, but the realm needs two. If you refuse, I'll claim it. Not for power, but to save what we've built." The hall gasped, lords whispering, Tyrion's face pale. Jaime's hand rested on his sword, his loyalty torn. Daenerys' voice was ice. "You challenge me, Aegon. My dragons, my armies, they'll burn the north before I yield." Jon felt the dragon's fire roar, but he held it in check. "Then let's end this, Daenerys. No war, no blood. A trial, here, now. The realm will judge." She laughed, a brittle sound. "A trial? You think words will douse my fire?" "Not words," Jon said. "Truth. Let the lords decide. If they choose you, I'll kneel. If they choose me, you step down. The realm deserves a choice." Daenerys hesitated, her eyes searching his. Tyrion stepped forward, his voice urgent. "Your Grace Aegon, this could work. A council, a vote. No war, no fire. The realm decides." The lords murmured, some nodding, others skeptical. Daenerys' gaze never left Jon's. "Very well," she said at last. "A council. But know this, Aegon, I am fire, and fire does not yield." The council convened in the great hall, lords from every region gathered. Jon stood before them, ghost at his side, his black cloak stark against the opulence. Daenerys stood opposite, her silver hair a crown of its own, Drogon's shadow looming through the windows. Tyrion presided, his voice steady, while Jaime watched, his loyalty uncertain. Jon spoke first, his voice clear. "I am Aegon Targaryen, son of Rhaegar and Lyanna. I fought the Night King, won Winterfell, ended Cersei's reign. I am king in the north. But I fight for the realm, not for power, but for peace. The throne divides us, and I offer a choice. Let Daenerys rule the south, me the north, as equals, or choose one ruler and let the other serve." Daenerys' voice was fire. "I am Daenerys Targaryen, breaker of chains, mother of dragons. I freed Slaver's Bay, defeated tyrants, and won the Iron Throne. I am your queen, born to rule. The realm needs one voice, one fire. Choose me, and I'll forge a new world." The lords debated, their voices a storm. Jon Royce spoke for the Vale, Edmure for the Riverlands, Gendry for the Stormlands. The south leaned toward Daenerys, her dragons a symbol of power. But the north, Vale, and Riverlands rallied to Jon, his balance of ice and fire a beacon of hope. The small folk, given voice through Davos, spoke of fear of fire, but trust in the king who spared Storm's End. As the votes were tallied, Jon felt the dragon's destiny settle. Tyrion announced the verdict, his voice heavy. The realm chooses Aegon Targaryen, king of the Seven Kingdoms. The hall erupted, cheers mingling with dissent. Daenerys' face was a mask, her eyes blazing. "You've won, Aegon," she said, her voice low. "But fire does not kneel." Before Jon could respond, she turned, striding from the hall. Drogon's roar shook the city, and Jon knew she would not yield easily. He sent Tormund and Jaime to watch her, but by dawn she was gone, sailing east with her dragons, unsullied, into Dothraki. A letter left in her chambers read, "The realm is yours, Aegon, but fire will return." Jon took the Iron Throne, not with joy, but with duty. He was crowned Aegon Targaryen, sixth of his name, king of the Seven Kingdoms. Ghost sat at his side, a white sentinel, while Sansa, Tormund, and Davos stood as his council. The North retained its autonomy, a kingdom within the realm, with Sansa as its lady. The Vale and Riverlands swore fealty, their lords loyal to the king who balanced fire and ice. Jon's reign was one of rebuilding. He sent grain to the Reach, rebuilt the Stormlands, and granted the Ironborn autonomy under Yara. Tyrion served as hand, his wisdom guiding the realm, while Jaime, seeking redemption, led the King's Guard. The small folk called Jon the Just King, his Stark honor tempering his Targaryen fire. But Daenerys' shadow lingered. Scouts reported her in Essos, rallying armies, her dragons growing stronger. Jon knew she would return, and the dragon's fire in his veins prepared for that day. For now, he ruled with ice and fire, a king forged in war, tempered by love. In the God's Wood of King's Landing, Jon knelt before a newly planted weirwood, Ghost at his side. He thought of Lyanna and Rhaegar, of Ned and Catelyn, of the North that had shaped him. He was Aegon Targaryen, but also Jon Snow, and his destiny was the realms. The dragon's fire burned within, but the wolf's heart guided him, and he would protect Westeros, against fire, against ice, against all that came.